Bruce, thank you for talking to me.
Pleasure, William.
Can you tell me why marriage equality is such an important issue for you?
Well, marriage equality became an important issue to me. For many years I hadn't given it much thought whatsoever, and it was really around 2007 when my partner went to the UK to attend a civil partnership ceremony for some very good friends of ours. And when he came back, he said, we should be able to do that. We, or not. We should have the choice as to whether we want to get married or not. We should have those equal rights. And that's when I started to really think about it. And it wasn't at the top of my list at the time. Whilst I'm a politician, I didn't come into politics on the back of a rainbow flag. I came in as a local councillor and through grassroots politics in Randwick, and found myself in state parliament. So as momentum is built in the community, I've pretty much been very tuned into the community's attitudes, and it's also that every new generation of gay and lesbian people come to get a political awareness, and they take on those issues which perhaps have been left behind by oldies like me.
You are, of course, a member of the Australian Liberal Party.
That's right.
The Liberal Party isn't perhaps always known for coming on board on things such as marriage equality or other issues of marginalised communities. How has it been for you being a Liberal and being supportive of marriage equality?
It has been no issue whatsoever. The great thing about being in the Liberal Party is you are allowed to have your own opinion, and you're able to disagree with the party's policies and critique them publicly, and effectively lobby within the party to try to change the party's policies. Now, that's on everything. Now, I think the Liberal Party has been a leader in looking after minorities and marginalised groups when you look at the totality of the party has been around. In fact, it was Liberal politicians that introduced the first legislation into any parliament in Australia dealing with decriminalisation of homosexuality, and that was Murray Hill in 1973 in South Australia at a state level, but Sir John Gorton in the early 1970s at a federal level. So the Liberal Party does have a history of reform in this area, and so I'm just one in a number that are contributing to that.
Many people say marriage equality is a federal issue. Why are so many state MPs and local councillors getting involved?
Well, because they would like that from their experience with their communities, with what they're hearing from their communities, is saying, look, this is a non-issue. Get on with it, Canberra. Just get on with it and do it. It's what we're hearing. The feedback that we're getting from our communities is that we're ready to do this, and it's not a big issue. So we did look at state-based same-sex marriage in New South Wales back in 2012. It was a very clunky approach to achieving marriage equality. We always knew that it was never going to be the best model. It was always preferable for it to be done at a federal level for a plethora of reasons. But we pursued it and came very close in the upper house. But for various reasons. But we also were able to push the debate a little bit further down the road and get a little more attention around it and a little bit more momentum, and demonstrate to our federal colleagues that you weren't going to be losing your pre-selection for candidacy, or you weren't going to be losing your seat if you took a stance on this.
You mentioned lobbying briefly earlier. What sort of influence do you think you can have on the federal leadership of your party?
I think the single most influence I've had in political life is being your average politician who just happens to be gay. So I'm not much. What I do is not much different to any other politician in servicing their communities and their constituents. But I just happen to be gay, in a relationship for the last 25 years, and if I don't treat it as anything particularly special, nobody else does. And I think that demonstrates to people it's just you get down business as usual, and that's where I've never had anybody in the party be rude or offensive or refuse to meet with me. It's just never happened in the 17 years I've been in the Liberal Party.
How do you reassure people who may oppose marriage equality on, say, religious, cultural or traditional grounds?
Well, look, I respect their views, but there's, in this country, from day one, there has been marriage between those that, whilst they may purport to be Christians, they aren't, or any other religion. There's a lot of people that choose not to get married in a church. It is still recognised by the state as marriage. So religion is another layer to marriage that religious people can apply to their union, but it's that marriage union does not depend upon it being sanctified in a church or mosque or synagogue or temple or whatever.
What do you say to those who perhaps oppose marriage equality on the grounds that it's a patriarchal institution or it entrenches a divide between married or unmarried couples? Do you have a response?
Look, it is funny how those now are strong advocates for marriage equality, probably going back 50 years, were probably the same advocates for free love and not and viewing marriage as a patriarchal institution. I suppose my experience of growing up in a family, your typical Aussie family, is that while my dad was packing the dishwasher on Saturday morning and just getting in and being, I don't see it in my own experience. I don't see it as a patriarchal institution, right? And I think it's offensive to think that women would stand for that anyway. I asked my mum and dad, and they'll have very clear views that he'll think he's in control, but Mum knows she's in control.
What influence do you think people like Alan Jones can have?
Well, I think it would be helpful if he were to come out in support of.
He already has.
He has?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Do you think people like Tony Abbott and the leadership will listen to people like him?
Well, all I can say to my federal colleagues, no matter which party they're in, because there are conservatives, social conservatives on both sides of politics, and is that the Australian public have moved on this. They're accepting of the concept of marriage equality. It's not ruffling the feathers of their constituencies. Their jobs are safe, and just like we've seen with every major law reform to do with the LGBTQI community, the earth hasn't opened up and swallowed us all in as a result of reform, and it'll be the same. It'll be the day after the vote is taken. It'll be business as usual.
When do you think that successful vote could take place?
Look, all I can say is it will happen. It will happen. I can't give you a timetable because I know as much as you do.
Next couple of years?
I would love to see it passed in this Parliament, in this term, but that may not happen. But it will happen. It will happen.
Do you think?
I say to my colleagues, though, don't be on the wrong side of history.
Absolutely. Do you think the campaign for equal rights with LGBTQI people ends with marriage equality?
No, there's still a number of areas which we have to address, and I think Human Rights Commissioner's Tim Wilson's report recently released indicated that there were inconsistencies right across the country, and indeed issues that we have to address here in New South Wales. So that's the focus for me in this term of Parliament, is to address those things. There's very little influence I can have on marriage equality. We've pushed the barrow as far down the road as we can on that one in New South Wales, but there's other areas which we have to look at.
A couple more questions. What other LGBTQI issues do you think are quite pressing?
Well, certainly, whilst they're not not something that we can necessarily legislate, but the issue around bullying within schools and homophobia. I mean, if we can address that, if we can instill in our kids, in the students in schools, an absolute standard of respect for one another, then we'll see that just permeate right through society, and the days of homophobia and violence against the LGBTQI community will hopefully be at an end.
And my final question, how can people who support marriage equality get involved?
Well, I think write to your local MP. Don't just sign a petition. Right? Petitions take 30 seconds to sign, and they don't carry as much weight as a letter from not only LGBTI people, but from their parents, from their neighbours, from their friends, from the straight community, saying, why aren't you doing something about this? What are you doing to advance this in the federal parliament? And that is the single most effective way, is getting letters from really our straight brothers and sisters, explaining to them that this is just not an issue and want to just get on and do something.
Bruce, thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure, Wayne.